MacNeice was born in Carrickfergus, Northern Ireland, in 1907. His father became an Anglican bishop, and his mother was committed to a Dublin nursing home in 1913, suffering from clinical depression. A year later, she died of tuberculosis. MacNeice was 6. His older brother, William, had Down syndrome, which the family of MacNeice's fiancée, Mary Ezra, demanded to know whether or not was hereditary. Meanwhile, MacNeice's ambitious archdeacon father expressed his horror at the prospect of his son marrying a Jew. They married in 1930 with no parent in attendance, and their son Daniel was born in May 1934. 6 months later, Mary left MacNeice and her infant son and took up with a student. MacNeice was at school with characters such as Anthony Blunt and John Betjeman. He was part of W. H. Auden's coterie at Oxford, and his work was admired and promoted by T. S. Eliot. In the course of research, I watched a YouTube video on MacNeice, produced by Carrickfergus Museum for Irish National Poetry Day, and presented by Trevor Parkhill, who read, amongst others, MacNeice's short poem, Autobiography, which I'm going to read first. This angst-ridden poem is about the fear of abandonment that can inhabit children's night terrors. What Shakespeare identified as horrid night, the child of hell, which I always misremembered appositely as horrid child of night. Happily, I've never had any trouble falling asleep, at least not until my mid-70s, although the ability did get me into trouble when I fell asleep too readily following an argument. Being hit when asleep is a disagreeable experience. However, I've a young grandson who's been plagued with night terrors, especially on the rare occasions when his mother is out for the evening and his grisly grandfather is in charge below. I had to include this poem to honour his torment and assure him that his mum and his dad will always be there for him, and by the time he understands this, he'll be as loved and happy by night as he certainly is by day. Autobiography. In my childhood, trees were green, and there was plenty to be seen. Come back early, or never come. My father made the walls resound. He wore his collar the wrong way round. Come back early, or never come. My mother wore a yellow dress. Gently, gently, gentleness. Come back early, or never come. When I was 5, the black dreams came. Nothing after was quite the same. Come back early, or never come. The dark was talking to the dead. The lamp was dark beside my bed. Come back early, or never come. When I woke, they did not care. Nobody was there. Come back early, or never come. When my silent terror cried, nobody replied. Come back early, or never come. I got up. The chilly sun saw me walk away alone. Come back early, or never come. This next poem is Eclogue Between the Motherless, which is included in his 1938 collection, The Earth Compels. Facebook friends will know that on recently finding an old bookmark, I discovered that I had, at least partially, discovered this poem in the 1960s, but had forgotten it. For those like me who aren't classic scholars and are unfamiliar with eclogues, They are essentially short bucolic poems, presumably extolling the beauties of nature. This poem appears to be neither, which may be the point MacNeice is making, a point that flew over my head and so far hasn't returned. It takes the form of a conversation between two men recently returned from holidays spent with their respective parents. Each clearly knows the other well, as is evident in the candour and intimacy of their conversation, and especially in the way that they don't always respond directly to each other's contributions, but use the other's engagement to explore internal thoughts and perspectives. MacNeice would have been in his late 20s when he wrote this, and both protagonists have some life experience and former relationships. But as A.J. Cronin might put it, the young sap was still rising. The poem explores the potent vestiges of childhood, laid vivid by their recent visits to their childhood homes, and their aspirations for relationships with women that are deeply permeated with the premature loss of their mothers. Eclogue, Between the Motherless. What did you do for the holiday? I went home. What did you do? Oh, I went home for the holiday. Had a good time? Not bad as far as it went. What about you? Oh, quite a good time on the whole. Quite a good time on the whole at home for the holiday. As far as it went. In a way, it went too far, back to childhood, back to the backwoods mind. I could not stand a great deal of it, bars on the brain, and the blinds drawn in the living room not to fade the chair covers. There were no blinds drawn in ours. My father has married again. A girl of 30 who never had any lovers and wants to have everything bright. That sounds worse than us. Our house is just a grass-grown tumulus. My father sits by himself with the Boss decanter. The garden is going to rack. The gardener only comes 3 days. Most of our money was in linen. My new stepmother is wealthy. You should see her in jodhpurs, brisking into breakfast from a morning canter. I don't think he can be happy. How can you tell? That generation is so different. I suppose that your sister still keeps house for yours? Yes, and she finds it hell. Nothing to do in the evenings. Talking of the evenings, I can drop the ash on the carpet since my divorce. Never you marry, my boy. One marries only because one thinks one is lonely. And so one was, but wait till the lonely are two and know better. As a matter of fact, I've got to tell you, the first half year is heaven. Come back from the nursery, swans down kisses. But after that, one misses something. My dear, don't depress me in advance. I've got to tell you, my wife was warmth, a picture and a dance, her body electric. Silk used to crackle and her gloves move where she left them. How one loves the surface, but how one lacks the core. Children, of course, might make a difference. Personally, I find I cannot go on any more like I was, which is why I took this step in the dark. What step? I thought I too might try what you... Don't say that you... After all this time... Let's start from the start. When I went home this time, there was nothing to do, and so I got haunted, like a ball of wool that kittens have got at. All my growing up, all the disposed-of process of my past, unravelled on the floor. One can't proceed any more, except on a static past. When the ice floe breaks, what's the good of walking? Talking of ice, I remembered my mother standing against the sky and saying, "Go back in the house and change your shoes." And I kept having dreams, and kept going back in the house, a sense of guilt like a scent. The day I was born, I suppose, that same hour was full of her screams. "You're run down. Wait till you hear what I've done." It was not only dreams, even the crockery. Odd that is not all broken by now, and the rustic seat in the rockery with the bark flaked off, all kept reminding me, binding my feet to the floating past. In the night at the lodge, a dog was barking, as when I was little in the night, and I could not budge in the bedclothes. Lying alone, I felt my legs were paralyzed into roots, and the same cracks in what used to be the nursery ceiling gave me again the feeling I was young amongst icons, helpless at the feet of faceless family idols, walking the tightrope over the tiger pit, running the gauntlet of inherited fears. So after all these years I turned in the bed and grasped the want of a wife, and heard in the rain on the gravelled path the steps of all my mistresses, and wondered which was coming, or was she dead, and her shoes given to the char which tapped through London. The black streets mirrored with rain and stained with lights. I dreamed she came while a train was running behind the trees, with power progressing. Undressing deftly, she slipped cool knees beside me. The clipped hair on her neck prickled my tongue, and the whole room swung like a ship till I woke with the window jittering in its frame from the train passing the garden, carrying its load of souls to a different distance. And of others, isolated by associations, I thought the scent of syringa, or always wearing a hat of fine white straw and never known in winter. Splinters of memory. When I was little, I sorted bits of lustre and glass from the heap behind the hen house, and they are all distorted now, the beautiful sirens, mutilated and mute in dream's dissection, hanged from pegs in the blue-beard closet of the brain, never again nonchalantly to open the doors of disillusion. Whom recording the night marked time, the dog at the lodge kept barking, and as he barked, the big cave opened of hell, where all their voices were one and stuck at a point, like a gramophone needle stuck on a notched record. I thought, can I find a love beyond the family and feed her to the bed my mother died in, between the tall boys and the vase of honesty, on which I was born and groped my way from the cave, with a half-eaten fruit in my hand, a passport meaning enforced return for periods to that country? Or will one's wife also belong to that country? And can one never find the perfect stranger? My complaint was that she stayed a stranger. I remember her mostly in the car, stopping by the white moons of the petrol pumps, in a camel hair rug, comfortable, scented, and alien. That's what I want. Someone immutably alien. Send me a woman with haunches out of the jungle and frost patterns for fancies, the hard light of sun upon water in diamonds dancing, and the brute swagger of the sea. Let her love be the drop from the cliff of my dream, be the axe on the block, be finesse of the ice on the panes of the heart. Be careless, be callous, be glass frolic of prisms, be eyes of guns through lashes of barbed wire. Be the jailer's smile and all that breaks the past. Odd ideals you have. All I wanted was to get really close, but closeness was only a glove on the hand, alien and veinless, and yet her empty gloves could move. My next move is what I've got to tell you. I picked on the only one who would suit and wrote proposing marriage. Who is she? But she can't have received it. She's in India. India be damned. What's her name? I said, I cannot offer you anything you want. Why? And I said, I know in 2 years' time it will make no difference. I was hardly able to write it at the clawfoot table where my mother kept her diary. There I sat concocting a gambler's medicine. The afternoon was cool. The ducks drew lines of white on the dull slate of the pool. And I sat writing to someone I hardly knew, and someone I shall never know well. Relying on that, I stuck up the envelope, walked down the winding drive. All that was wanted, a figurehead, passed by the lodge, where the dog is chained and the gates, relying on my mood to get it posted. Who is the woman? Relying, who is the woman? She is dying. Dying of what? Only a year to live. Forgive me asking, but only a year, and 10 yards down the road, I made my goal where it has always stood, waiting for the last. You must be out of your mind. If it were anyone else, I should not mind. Waiting for the last collection before dark, the pillar box, like an exclamation mark.